About when you saw, or sorry, share a time when you saw and celebrated a victory, even a small one.
My 6-year-old don't went to bed no more.
That's a big victory right there.
I haven't bought a pull up in 2 months. I'm excited. And so we celebrated. He had soybean ice because he lactose intolerant. So and gluten free. So we had some yucky cake and yucky ice cream. Yeah. Just the small things.
One of our favorites was when our biomom, they finally got their apartment. I think she'd been in
About 3/4 way home.
when we had first gone back full time with her, and so it was just really special. And we asked her, can we bring dinner to you guys tonight in your new little home? And she didn't have a table or furniture, so we just laid down a blanket and had a picnic in our living room, and it just felt really special. It was a fun thing to celebrate with her. We do that a lot though. When something good happens at work, we take her out to dinner. And I can tell with her too, it's important that we have the dates on the calendar of her sobriety, things like that really matter. And so we make sure to acknowledge it, even if it's just a text or, it doesn't have to be anything big, but those things are really important to her.
I think for me, the small things of where it just kind of seems like everything falls into place and works well together. Like, even with meals with 5 kids, bound one of them's not going to want to eat it, and there's going to be a meltdown or setting the table before or after. But just every once in a while, you have those perfect nights where everybody helps set the table, everybody helps clean up after, nobody's complaining about food, and you just sit and just have an enjoyable meal together. And it's just one of those things that you're building towards those. You're building to those all the time, and there's little roadblocks that kind of trip them up every once in a while. But every once in a while, you just get those perfect nights where it's just this is amazing. Thank you.
You don't have to. Oh my goodness, I can go to the next one.
Yeah, why don't you? Because I was listening and wasn't thinking.
What does your routine or your plans look like the day that you start a hosting or a foster placement? Are there specific ways you prep your home, certain things you do to help make the children feel more at home? Are there certain rules or expectations that you discuss? As Rachel kind of talked about this already.
Yeah, when they come in, we sit down and talk. So I do a favorite items list for them, like what's your favorite food, what's your favorite meal, what's your favorite color, what's your favorite store, and we try to have, do things just so they can feel a part of the family. So we want to know all, what do you like and what sets you off and how do you set other people off, all that stuff. And we just talk. And it's, we don't do anything really special. I don't think that's special. That's just what we do. But we just want to make them feel comfortable. And so they have their rooms. They're allowed to fix their room up what they want, and stuff like that. Personalize it and things like that. So yeah, and like I said, because I deal with teens, it's a little different. But most of them are kind of to themselves. They just want to go listen to their music, and stop talking and let them go anyway. So sometimes we do.
Do you have any input with their music, or do you want certain things?
Oh yeah. I don't have all that ratchetness in the house. For the most part, because they've been listening to whatever they listen to all the time. God has blessed me because my tolerance level is a lot different than when I first started this journey almost 30 years ago. Because it had been like, oh, no. But now, when I hear something that I know, then I tell them. Now, if it's just bad music, that's one thing. But like if you calling the women H's and B's and all that kind of stuff, no, we don't do that one. Or sometimes I tell them, use your headset, because we're on the subject. Nobody can hear that. But also, this is a temple. God lives there. He don't want to hear that. And so what I've seen over time is lesson and lesson and lesson. So now I only have one who every now and then try to push the limit. He'll play something, but for the most part, they are respectful, So, but yeah, I do, and I reserve the right to monitor what they're listening to, and I use that. Some days we come, okay, phone check. Everybody put the phone on the table, unlock them, and I see y'all about 30, 40 minutes. Sometimes I don't even go good. And then I hear, I didn't do that, but somebody sent me that. So, it's a learning.
And then you gotta go look.
For real. My wheels are turning. Oh my gosh.
I think for me that this is the area that we had to grow the most in. I think this is the most challenging. In training they said like think of your house rules, and me and my wife were like, oh, I can't really think of anything. We don't have any but what we didn't realize is how many unspoken rules that our family did have together that we just took for granted. That all these things that don't stand on that, don't do it. There's all these things, and so like we were just continually faced with like, oh, okay, we need a rule for that. Okay, we need a rule for that. And so I think for me, one of the biggest things that kind of clicked for me was where is there going to be a bottleneck? What are the things that all the kids are going to try to go for at the same time and try to think of ways around that? So for example, you'd run into, okay, everybody go brush your teeth. And if we have everybody's toothbrush in the same bathroom, it just always turned into a fight because, oh, that's my toothbrush, that's my, and then it just turned into this huge ordeal. And so, either separating the bathroom so that there's up here or separating the times to it. In our basement, one of the chairs has the best viewing angle. And of course, all of them are going to fight over that. So it's deciding of saying, okay, that's off limits for kids, or saying, okay, if you really want to do it, okay, 15 minutes, I'm going to say it's O's turn. Okay, now it's Z's turn. Okay, now it's, and go through that way. Another thing is we did is we decided that kids aren't allowed to change unless they're in the bathroom alone, and nobody's been allowed in the bathroom. One of the things we were running into is we had the two kids staying with us in our son's room and our son in our daughter's room, and we'd say, okay, go get pajamas on, and my son would run into his room to get his pajamas while the other kids were changing. And so that was another one of those bottlenecks of we had his clothes in the room that they were supposed to change in, so we had to say, okay, let's pull that out, put that someplace else so they can have a private space. But then it was just easier to say, okay, the restroom is where we do that, and there's only one person in the restroom at a time. And so just continually trying to figure out those things. Another thing we did is we tried to have a private space for each kid in our house so that when things started escalating, we could say, okay, everybody go to their craft desk. And so everybody could just pull away from the moment and go to that area. It's a nice spot that way. When we had the two kids in the rooms together, again, that was conflict because we could never separate or get space between everybody. So even if it's just like this side of the room, there's this chair that we know is Z's chair, and this one is this way. And so, there's always that one bike that they all want to ride at the same time, and so just like really looking through your house and just what are those things that everybody's going to go for at the same time, and it's going to be a fight. How can you, I'd say most of the time I feel like a referee, but when it works, it definitely goes a lot smoother.
I'd say we're the opposite. We're the influencers, and so we've had to check that a few times because he's 2.5, and our kids are 9, 11, and 14, and we have 9, 11-year-old boys. And so they like Nerf guns, and they like throwing balls, and they like doing these things and wrestling with me. And so we get another text from the mom that, oh, he got in trouble at daycare for pew-pewing. We're just dying. We're like,
I told her to blame it on
he's wrestling with me and jumping on my back and stuff, and then we get the text, oh, he's, jumping on kids at daycare. Okay, that's us. There's been some of those where it's like, all right, we have to remind our kids that, he's impressionable, he's watching, and so when we're having conflict and we're doing other things, how we talk to each other and touch each other, we have to remember that. So sometimes that works to our advantage when our kids are like, hey, remember, it's right there, here he is, you know, and like, so I would say we've kind of been on the opposite side, setting up the expectations.
I'm gonna throw out a little twist at the question was like, how do you prepare? And one of the things that I'm gonna help you do to prepare is I will have a long, I think it's a 6-page document, I think, of all of the things that Miss Rachel was talking about. What's the favorite? What are the things that they love to eat? What are the things that they hate to eat? What are the things that they're allergic to? What are their favorite pastimes? What movies do they like? And we just have this long list of questions that I interview them on, and she's the expert. And so I will try to send that to you. I mean, if we have hey, it's June and we have a mom that needs a hosting of 4, you're probably not going to have a lot of time to look over that. And I'm not going to be able to get it to you very quick. But oftentimes we have several days that, okay, we need the hosting to start here, and I will get this information filled out and to you. And so that gives you opportunity of, okay, the kids really love pizza, and maybe we can just do pizza for the first night. Oh, this one doesn't like pepperoni, so we'll make sure that we don't have that on the pizza. And, oh, look, there's a theme here. The new kids really love this movie, and our kids don't hate it. So maybe we can watch this movie for a while. And so I'm going to do my best. If you're hosting, I'm going to do my best to get you as much information as possible, so that as you are preparing, as you're getting ready to have kids in, you can kind of start thinking of them.
Yep. Okay. And if you're gonna address this later, just skip it, but where you were talking about like the kids knowing, oh, we shouldn't play that music, or, you know, get in trouble, what do you use for correction? Like, yeah, the redo, but like with teenage kids, redo, maybe, but like what do you use for correction?
You know, when a kid doesn't have their technology for a while, that's the best correction.
Yeah.
Or when they can't go to the movie with their friend on Friday night.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have one right now. He has 2 F's in class, in 2 different classes, and 16 missing assignments. He turned in a paper, his name, the date, and some random mess on it. He was supposed to go to a friend's this week. You think he's gonna go? You think he's not crying? Can I please? I'll do all what I gotta do by Friday. It's impossible. Natural consequences, you know? So my thing is, you find out what they really like, and you dig right there. I mean, because nothing else helps. I mean, that helps because they know they want that phone. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna ask one more question, and then we're gonna open it up to questions because we're almost at the end. If you could share one piece of advice with the people here today, what would it be?
What they like.
I would say, specifically in dealing with parents, throw your expectations out the window. Expect them to be who they are. They aren't going to probably see life the way you do, and we're going to really talk about that starting next week. Let's put in an ad for not next week, the week after Thanksgiving. Let's put in an ad for that one. We're going to really talk about why don't they do things and see things the way we do. What on earth is wrong with them? That's where we're kind of going to go in the next time we're together. But so the brief overview is they aren't going to see life the way you do. They aren't going to parent the way you do. They aren't going to handle their money the way you do. They aren't going to make decisions the way that you do. And you can't fix them, but you can love them. You can make differences.
that was my word, love. Because that's, I mean, the Bible says love covers a multitude of sin. And I don't care where they come from and what they've done, whether it's a parent of a kid love them, you'll see a difference. Love changes people like no other. I don't care how many times you fuss and cuss and do all that other craziness, that drives them away. And initially, your love may drive them away because they're not used to it. But if you stick in there with them and love them long enough, they'll come around to it, and then they'll want that. They'll want that. My daughter, oh my gosh, she's clingy because she's never had that. So if we just love them, they'll see God.
I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna be 1.5. To add unconditional to the love, which I think is so important and probably not seen by many in these situations. But I'd go with communication as well. It's hard, it's exhausting, it's time consuming, but I think open lines of communication are incredibly important. And texting sometimes works. Sometimes it needs to go right to a phone call or a face-to-face, and having those awkward conversations and just getting things out there on the table so you can start to work through them, because it's going to be messy. And I think without that, then things can start to unravel, and needs aren't going to get met, and things like that.
Yeah, I would say to just have some prayer warriors in your life, because it's a battle once you enter into it, and you need to know that people are wrapping you up in prayers, because it's a lot. Yeah, and I think too, one thing that we would maybe have done different from the start is that our church has been really supportive, and Ronnie's been amazing. I don't know where we'd be without Ronnie, but I feel like I wish we had maybe pulled in another family or couple, just one more connection for her, because that's really what she needs, is connection. And it's a lot. It's exhausting. We're trying to raise our own 3 kids and love them up, and then she needs us a lot. And so I think just, praying about that, asking God to provide some other connections for those bio parents too is really helpful.
I think a lot of times we look at our circumstances and try to judge whether God's pleased with us or not based off of those. And we think if things are going really easy and smooth, then God must be really happy with us. But if things are going poorly, then we think he must be frustrated with us. But I think when we look at the Bible and most of the heroes of the faith, it's when things were the worst that God was the most with them. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't get saved until they were in the fire. And, Paul was shipwreck after shipwreck, snake bite, all these bad things. And so there's going to be a lot of bad things that happen. It's going to seem like the wheels are flying off of things, and it seems like everything is going wrong. And it's that, just even today I was in the emergency room with my wife. It's just kind of one of those things. It's just the one thing after another. It's just, you can either think, well, is God not in this? Is God not pleased with us doing this? Or am I saying, no, I believe God says he's going to come through with this. I know that we're doing this for the right reason, and I'm going to trust him even though my circumstances don't make sense right now. And so I'd say making that commitment now, that if you feel like God's calling you to this, then don't let your circumstances dictate whether you stay in it or not. You just keep going through that saying, nope, I know God called me to this, and I know he's going to carry me through regardless of my circumstances.
Yes.
Going off of what you just ended on, has anybody ever experienced a situation where the relationship needed to be terminated before it was done, I guess?
Nobody on this panel, well, other than probably some foster kids, yes. As far as families together, nobody on this panel has that happened, yes. This is a voluntary program. The voluntary program, that means that if mom isn't comfortable with what's going on, mom can shut it down. If you hit the point where you go, yeah, I can't continue. You guys get, this is 100% voluntary from both directions. And so, yes, we have had things that just shut down. And sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah,
it shuts down.
Yeah.
And sometimes it shuts down like, boom, we're done. And then a couple months later, it's, Can I have a redo, except that that's not really what mom usually says. And then it's boom, shut down, and then, hey, I could use some more support. And I think sometimes maybe Bob and his wife have felt like there's a little bit of a revolving door. And it has been that way. We've had lots of conversations about it.
And I'd say that's not just on the mom's end. I think if I'm really honest in my own heart, like I said, I'm done. Like I'm done. Like this is the last. This is the last day.
And Maddie and I had a conversation recently.
But then God does those funny things where like, we drop something off after saying, okay, I think this is the last time. We drop something off, and then saw the sun, and just like instantly our heart just like reopened to the opportunity, and then just the mom reached out after that again. It's just kind of one of those things that like you'll probably in your heart feel it a few times, and you'll be frustrated because the mom will be backing out. But at least with the hosting we have now, God's lined up the right times at the right times to where there's been a need when we have it in our heart to accept. And so, but I know that's probably not the case all the time. But
I'd say my advice on that is you have to look at the overall, the long term, look at the progress that's been made over time. I'm pretty even keel. I'd say I'm pretty steady in the relationship, and that's one thing that I continue to go back to. I continue to go back to that and say, okay, but let's go back 6 months, let's go back a year, let's go back 2 years. What's the progress that mom has made? What are all the good things that she's doing?
We always say she's doing a lot right. That's like her go-to. She's doing a lot right.
And so I think that reminding yourself of that, and again, walking around your bedroom saying I'm done, and this is the last time or whatever it is, but then kind of reorienting and resetting and saying, okay, let's look at this at the big picture and make your assessment that way as opposed to situation by situation, because you can drive yourself crazy if you do that.
We are.
I was gonna say, we're past time by a couple minutes. So if you have, I want to respect everyone's time. So you're welcome to stay, and you can ask more questions if you want, but we're past time, so you're welcome to leave too.
I got one question.
Yeah.
I've been sheltered too much too, like Robert. So
Yeah.
can you describe a challenging, messy situation? Are you at liberty to describe something like that? Are you at liberty to describe like a messy, challenging situation you guys have been through?
I'm happy to deal with that. To help you, and I'm not actually going to describe either one of the situations that we have represented here, but I've got another mom who I've mentioned her a little bit. Her trauma started at age 3. And she accurately describes herself as a prickly pear or a porcupine. Prickly pear cactus or a porcupine. And she is so hard to have a conversation with. And she needed a hosting because she was having surgery. And so we started the hosting about a week before surgery because she was not mobile. And the closer we got to the surgery, the more panicked she got, and the more critical she got, and the more she was attacking the host home. This is funny now. It was very stressful at the time, but I got a phone call and she said, I got a complaint about I need to talk to you about that host home. And I said, okay, what's up? They sent me a picture. Okay, that's what host homes are supposed to do. Just want to clarify, pictures are good. My kid looked happy. Okay, so this is another problem. I get it. They were at the park. Okay, the park. My child was in a swing, and so they took a picture and I could see she was dressed in a pair of burgundy pants and a teal shirt. And everybody knows I don't dress my kid that way. Okay, yeah. I'll have a chat with the host home about it. The next day, I get a call. Got a problem with host home. What's going on?
This is my favorite.
They sent me a picture. Kid looks happy. Eating supper. They're feeding her. Okay, good. She's eating turkey and spaghetti squash. And everybody that knows me knows that I don't feed my child squash because that's just gross. Okay, I'll have a conversation with the host home about this. A couple of days later, she had surgery. Actually, the night before surgery, she called and she said, I just don't think that this hosting's working out. They're not taking care of her hair right. And I said, okay, but it's, you're having surgery tomorrow morning. What's the plan? I don't know. I said, well, it's actually after 5 and I don't have any way to get everything put together to end the hosting tonight. And so it's gonna have to wait till after surgery tomorrow morning. She calls me right shortly after surgery and she said, I need to talk to you about the host home. So I said, what's that? They kept my little girl safe during surgery, and I didn't think anybody could do that. We have a lot of mental health issues in a lot of our families that comes from what we're going to talk about next time we're together, which comes from the trauma that they've experienced since they were this tall. We had one relapse, one alcohol relapse in the mom that Doug and Maddie have worked with. And that's kind of a scary thing because she was incarcerated because of drugs. We have a lot of sometimes what feels to us like really irrational behavior. Bob, does that sound? Does that sound? And a lot of this is what we're going to do. Oh wait, no, we're going to do this. Oh no, it's going to be over here. This is what we're doing. And so trying to roll with the punches and understand that she's actually doing the best that she can, given where the trauma comes from, given the situation she's in.
Yeah, I think if you listen to behind those texts, like you hear moms who loves their kids, who can't be around their kids, and I think that's where it gets really hard and messy. Is there are a lot of these moms like really love their kids and they can't be around them, like they just can't help them in the moment, and it's just that's just one of those heartbreaking things where that's what you see it show through, and you see like, oh man, like that's the root issue here is they love their kids and they can't be with them, and so it comes out in weird ways. And,
I mean, if you needed to take your kids and give them off to a complete stranger, would it impact your psyche? And I'm assuming that we have some stability, and we have not all grown up with a ton of trauma. And if we have, we've got a chance to work at. We've got our support systems. The reason they're giving their child up to a complete stranger is they don't have anybody safe enough to care for their child.
that's been one thing that's helpful with us, with our kids too, when they're confused by behaviors they say. We say, okay, how would you feel if we dropped you off at somebody's house you didn't know? Like, what would you be angry? Would you be frustrated? Would you be, and so like kind of using those, empathy side on the other side as well.
We will get into some of that a little bit more the next time we get out. Anybody else?
Thanks for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For me, I work at Lake Rain Church, and so I kind of heard about a group of people there, and kind of really appealed to me with a couple reasons. Me and my wife had talked about foster care and adoption on one kind of part that way, but a couple of parts that we're kind of working into too is you look at society and the world and politics and all these things that just kind of you want to control one way, but unless you're willing to really engage in it, you're kind of, I don't necessarily want to go as far as that hypocrite, but you're kind of not really addressing the issue. You're just willing to go one way and just kind of go that way. So I wanted to do something that was really making a difference at kind of the ground level. The other aspect of it is I grew up in a really blessed home. Like, I don't think I really had any idea that the world was as broken and desperate it was until I was way later in life, or way later than I should have. And I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted my kids to have a real idea of what the world was like, and I wanted them to engage in helping people from a young age. And so We wanted to do something as a family where us as a family could love on people as a family and do God's missions together. And so it was kind of those two things that kind of really pushed us into it full force.
Ms. Rachel, talk to us about Martin.
I've been with Christian Heritage since 2012. I've been doing foster care and working with young people for a very long time, very long. I have a personal story because I was a foster kid, so I served who I used to be. So it's a little different. I'm still in it because I'm not too bright, so. To do this, you have to be a little crazy and called, a whole lot of calls. You see lives change, it makes all the difference in the world. Even the toughest of the toughest, but when you see that heart soften, it makes all the difference. So I'm still here.
Okay, so tell us about the connections that you've built with the parents of the children that you have hosted.
I don't host, so
Yeah.
I just foster, but I still build a relationship with parents because I believe that it's a partnership. You know, it's working together for the best of that child or children, whoever you have in your home. I just believe it just works better. Is it easy? Absolutely not, because you have some that make it not so easy. But for those that you can really work with, it's a beautiful thing when that child can see you and their biological birth parents working together. And, you know, I'm the person that you can't pull nothing on me, so it's not gonna be playing one end against the other. We don't do that. But they try. But it's just, it's good because what I've learned is that you're not only helping the child, but you're also helping that parent. Because 9 times out of 10, that parent needs parenting. They need help. They need somebody to love on them as well as their child. So it's a beautiful thing when you can make it work. So that's what I do.
Yeah, we are still very connected, very involved with the bio mom and our little guy. He's been home now for 2 years with her. He was with us for 5 months as a newborn. And so just from the very beginning, we were just really intentional to just shower her with love and show her that we were for her. We wanted to make sure she understood that we not only were gonna care for her child, but care for her and come alongside her. And so there's some little examples how we did from the beginning that I think really softened her heart towards us and helped her build trust with us was right after he moved into our home. It was Mother's Day, and so we had our life group put together like a little Mother's Day gift basket for her, and we were able to give that to her at one of their visits. She was hospitalized shortly after too and was really sick, and so we made a little get well sign, and we had a picture of her little guy with the sign, sent that to her just to show we were thinking of her and cheering her on. We started inviting her to church and to our family holiday gatherings. You could talk about kind of what our weekends have looked like the last couple of years with her.
Yeah, it's really, the relationship's really just been an extension of our family, and as Maddie mentioned, we invite her into our home on our holidays, and we chat often, nightly, usually with FaceTime when he's not with us, or text messages during the day, and between Ronnie and the two of us, we're really her full support system, and so that can be scary at times, it can be exhausting at times, but also we've been able to give her that opportunity to see what that love looks like, and establish relationships that she's never really had in her life at all. And so 2-ish years later, we still see him typically every Friday and or Saturday night so that she can work overtime on the weekends and make extra money at her job, give her a little reprieve as a single mom. And so we arrange pickups, and we'll have him over and send pictures back to her, and just make sure that she stays connected when he's with us. But usually that just comes into additional time being committed to her. So it's not a project for us. It's really more of an extension of our family and our life. And that can be messy, but that also can be okay. So a lot of it's just investing in her and trying to listen to her and giving her that sense of calm and reason when she needs it, and just that sense of community that she hasn't had in the past. So why are we still in it? It's because we're connected well beyond just a program and something that we thought that we'd just jump in and jump out of.
We fell in love too with both of them, so yeah, helps us stick with it when it's hard. So.
Yeah, our first hosting, the mom had to do a short stay in prison, and there was a period of time building up to it where we invited her to church, invited her over for dinner before we even hosted the kids, and then we had the kids for that period of time, and then continued to do that after. She continued to go to church with us. At Berean, I oversee the janitorial team. Her job kind of fell through, and I was able to give her a job at the church, and people in the church invested in her life, and just it was just amazing to see her just continue to grow and flourish and keep doing these things. And now it's been to the point where she was able to get a full-time job of herself, and she's in our life group now, and it's like it's kind of been the ideal situation of just seeing God move in somebody's life through this one point and just continued effort that way. And I think going back to the first question of why we still do it, that was just kind of like, that just gave us a real taste of like what God does through this program and what God can do from this program. And so, that was kind of maybe a little bit of a unique one, but it was still pretty incredible to us. So.
Okay, so how have you guys experienced God's presence through hosting or fostering, and what has God taught you about yourself through this journey?
Don't take yourself so serious. Yeah, you can't. You will die in this because you can't. We've had a lot of God moments because I think everything goes back to Him. So I use everything as a life lesson. There's a lesson in it somewhere. So from the dog dying to grandma's sick or my mom don't want to talk to me anymore, we use everything. And it all points back to God and our own brokenness. I have kids who, one boy in particular, who can never go back to his parents, period. That's heartbreaking. But that void is a void that the Father wants to fill. And so we use that and we talk about things like that. Our devotions sometimes are centered around things like that. So we have a lot of those little moments. We do devotion every morning, and God sometimes chooses the funniest things, the littlest things, But one thing I've learned about me personally is don't be too, because I can have the tendency to be just like super, super serious. But because I deal with little lives, and they have had it so hard, sometimes you just gotta learn how to laugh. Even when you wanna cry, you learn to laugh and trust God in the midst of it. So we have a lot of those little moments.
Yeah, God has been so near through the whole process. We were even asking our kids some of these questions, just seeing what their perspectives are, and it is so cool that they've gotten to see us step out in faith and God show up and provide. We've learned a lot about His character and that we can trust in Him. One of the words that's been my word for the last couple of years is surrender. He's really taught me about surrendering everything to Him. That I can let go of control, which is not easy for me to do. And recently, He keeps impressing on me that this is His battle, that I am to obey and trust the outcome to Him. So that has been huge for me. It's very freeing because it can get really overwhelming and scary. But yeah, surrender's been my big word.
I can piggyback on surrender. I think a different aspect of that, I like control, I like clarity, I like certainty, and struggled with that for years. And funny how God continues to refine me and showing me that I can't control, especially in this situation. There's so much out of our control on a daily basis. And I mean, that comes down to a simple text message. I can't control when I'm going to get the next catastrophe that's text to us. So, you know, I can go back 2 nights ago. We get a picture and a video with hives on the little guy's face, and what do I do? And, you know, and so that certainly is not there as you go through the program. And like I said, I like being in control. I like clarity of situations, and
You wanna fix it.
yeah, I'm a fixer. I'm a problem solver, and so I've had to surrender a lot of that as part of the process because it's just not doable. But again, sitting and waiting on him to provide and continue to speak that truth to her and giving her the opportunity to see how God can show up. I think that's been pretty fruitful in the process, not only for her, but for us.
Yeah, I think we can kind of live our lives in a little bubble to where we're not really ever challenged and we're not really ever having to use faith and not have to do these things. And then you get in a moment where you actually have to do it and it kind of stares you right in the face and you have to make that decision in your heart that this is what it is. And I know, like, even with my daughter, the other day she was telling me the kids that are staying with us now, she was, I don't think they're grateful. Like, it's really frustrating me that they're not grateful for the things. And I said, well, do you think we're doing this because we want them to feel grateful? Is that the reason we're doing it? And she's like, well, probably not. And I say, and the reason we're doing this is because God's asked us to love them, and it doesn't matter what we get in return. That's just what he's called us to do. And she said, is that just something Christians say, or is that what we actually believe? And in my head, I'm like, I was honest with her, and I said, sometimes I don't know if I believe that. We're working on that together. We're trying to believe that together, and this is an opportunity for God to show himself. And so I feel like I'm constantly in these places where the rubber meets the road, and I have to really decide do I believe God is good? Do I believe God is going to follow through with what he said he will do? And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's a little bit easier, but he shows up every time.
A thing that God has impressed on me, and I haven't hosted, so I'm working with, I have about 12 moms that I'm working with fairly consistently right now. And one of the things that God continues to impress on me is it doesn't matter how frustrated I get with the fact that they're not doing things the way that I think they should be. God adores them. God loves even extremely messy people. I've got one mom who is I've got a couple moms that are very messy, but one in particular that if you were to see her in the store with her child, you would go, why doesn't somebody do something about that mom and the way she's treating her child? And it's true. The mom is not a good mom. And I sometimes go into her home and there's nothing that she does that crosses the line that we call CPS on. That doesn't mean she's a good mom. That doesn't mean that her child isn't having some consequences from mom's behaviors. And it's like, and actually just a couple nights ago, God impressed on me. This mom's trauma started at age 3 and it went her entire life. She's been 4 or 5 years out of abuse now. She's in her 30s. And so if she's had that kind of abuse and neglect her entire life, why would I expect her to know how to nurture her 4-year-old? She's never seen it. But I now have an opportunity to start nurturing her. Do I have to? It's not easy. It's hard, and yet, that was God saying, hey, you have an opportunity here. You have an opportunity because for some reason she's decided to trust me. And I'm one of 3 people in her life that is safe and healthy. The other 2 are the people that aren't here on the panel that were her host home. Her host, the couple that cared for her daughter. She trusts the three of us. And right now, that's who God can use to speak nurture into her life. And so it's not what I think is right, it's not the way I think she should behave. I can't expect her to get her act together, but I can nurture her and show her something she's never seen with the hope that that will trickle down to her child.
Love that. Okay, this one only applies to some of you, so if you feel like answering it, it doesn't really, you can modify it however you need to. What was it like hosting children as you parented your own children? Did you find it difficult, confusing, easy as pie?
I'd say rewarding, but it definitely does come with its challenges. I think with one of our first hostings, the kids were playing house, and they were all getting along and it was fine, but the little girl, the way she would play would be like, get out of here, I don't love you anymore, like I'm so, like, and it was like very toxic, and it was very like, that's the way she played house because that's what she'd experienced, and my kids have a different experience, and so the worldview just comes crashing down into this moment, and like my kids are just like, what's happening, you know, and so, you know, trying to pull aside and just kind of, you know, figuring out what's age appropriate and what's not, as you don't want to just say, oh, just trust us, it'll be fine, you know, because it is an opportunity to teach and grow, but at the same time, there is a world out there that they're not quite ready for, and so trying to figure out how do you teach them to put themselves in other people's shoes in a way that's healthy, and so I'd say that's kind of been the rewarding aspect of it, is I've seen my children all grow in their compassion for other people and their ability to relate to people different than them, but it comes with some like, I've never heard some of those words before. It's just like, yeah, and I hope you never hear them again, and I hope you don't repeat them. But, you know, like I said, I'd say almost everything with this, it comes with challenges you didn't know you'd expect to have, but it also comes with rewards that you never thought that you'd have either. And so I think trying to navigate it is the trick.
Our situation was wonderful. I mean, we brought home this gorgeous little baby, and it was actually right at the start of all the schools shutting down. So we'd been homeschooling for a month, and then it was like, okay, scratch homeschooling, we're gonna learn all about babies. And that was our homeschooling. It was amazing. And so it was really fun because we were all home together and just getting to love on this little guy and starting to love on his mom. And so with the infant, I mean, it was pretty great, I'm not gonna lie. But asking our kids some of these questions, it is a sacrifice though too, because they love him like a little brother, and you know, when he left, it was hard, really hard, and it's still hard because it's not always consistent, it's not always what we think it's gonna look like, and so, you know, we were the ones called to do this, but it affects them. But it's awesome because, I mean, they're really getting to see firsthand what it's like to trust that he's gonna show up and provide, and yeah, I mean, they're learning so much compassion for people who have just had way different lives than they've had and have walked hard paths, so.
Well, I think those life situations that Robert's talking about, I don't feel like we have to have the conversation with our kids about drinking and drugs, because they've been around it, they've seen it, they've seen the impacts of it. And I don't think that you can get a better lesson for your kids than for them to see that, but also the redemption coming out of it. For them being able to see us come alongside her and love her through it, and see the work and the progress that she's made. And she makes mistakes like anybody else, and for them to be able to see that has been pretty great. But you know, we have 3 at home. He became our 4th child when he came into our home at 2 days old, and that first 5 months that we had him, you know, there was interaction with her, but she was doing a lot of things to get her life right, and so he didn't come with the behavioral issues and the colorful words or anything like that. But I think the challenges that we were afforded were after that. It was sending him home, releasing him back to his mom, and then trying to navigate what that looks like kind of moving forward. Because it wasn't just, oh, here you go, great, everyone's happy, high-fived, and walk away. So it feels like it's definitely going to be a lifelong journey for all of us, and it's been great.
I have a question, kind of piggyback on that. So if we get older kids, and they obviously come from a rough background, and they're saying that kind of stuff, what's the best way to address that? I mean, how should it be addressed if they are being inappropriate, saying inappropriate things? You know, obviously you want to correct it, so like, what's the best plan of action for that?
With the girl that we had the opportunity to sit down and just, when you've heard things like that, how did that make you feel? Like how did that make your mom feel? How did that make the people around you feel? And kind of help walk her through, like, oh, actually that isn't a fun thing to say, like that actually does bring up ideas in me. And then, but also having understanding that, like, that's the only world she's ever known. And so, you know, I encourage her, you know, listen to the way I talk to my wife, listen to the way I talk to my kids, you know, even when it gets stressful, like see how we handle stress, see how we do that things. And so, you know, maybe 1% moving the dial, you know, it wasn't like, oh, aha, the sun, you know, and she never had that problem again, you know, but like, it's that slow incremental thing, you know, and again, it's planting seeds for the future, but it's just trying to figure out, showing a different picture, showing something else that is possible, I think has kind of been our goal with some of those things, but I don't know if somebody else has better.
I would love to
I don't
hear
know
your
what's about better, but
Yeah.
I don't know what better is, but usually whenever I get anyone in my home, and I only deal with teenagers, you know, I have a 6-year-old. Anyway, that's different. I primarily deal with teenagers. So when they come in my home, they learn the expectations. This is how we talk. This is how we communicate. This is how we treat each other. And we just sit down. It's not anything badgering, but just so they know. And the good thing with my household is because I have my 19-year-old who's no longer, he's in job corps now, but when he was home, he was fully invested in what we do because this is all he knows. He was 3 months old when the house was bombarded with kids. So this is all he knows for real. And I have a nephew that the same thing because he was like 6. So a lot of times, because he is invested, when he hears something, he will say, you know, that ain't gonna work here. You don't wanna say that. Please don't let mom see you do that. You know, he speaks up. And so most of my older kids now, they do the same thing. So they help each other when they come in. It's an adjustment. It's hard because you have kids that come from very hard places. So their vernacular don't sound like ours. Their verbiage is not like ours. Some of them have some potty mouths. And I've been in the military, and some of the language I hear from kids is worse than I heard from the Army. But it comes with time, and it comes with loving it out of them, you know, and giving them something else to replace what they've always done and always heard with. Some of them haven't seen healthy relationships. They haven't seen healthy fights, because to have a fight is okay, it really is, but can you have a healthy fight? It's okay to argue with your sister, but are you calling her the B word and A word, all this stuff? Or are you fighting and just, it's about the issue, not attacking her as a person? And those are some of the things that we have to teach when we come in. What's healthy? What does a healthy disagreement look like? When you get mad, because I was, do you hear me talk like that? So if I don't, you shouldn't either, you know? And then not just me, because who am I? What does the word say? Everything can go back to the word. And you say, well, some of them are in church. Yeah, they are. But you're the first Bible that they've been able to read. And so we have devotions. God has helped us to be skillful. So the things that I hear, sometimes I don't always address them. But somewhere down the line, we'll have a devotion that will address it. And then we'll talk about it. And then that person be like, you can see the wheels turning. I'm like, man, that's me, you know? So we just have to be creative. But me, when I first started, I had a sit-down conversation with my kids because I knew that it was going to impact their lives tremendously. And because mine was so young, they had been targeted because the kid was mad at me. That's just the reality, you know. Do you say, oh, well, it comes with the territory? No, you still have to protect your children. But then I had to make mine feel okay, because it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So because Bryson wasn't a bad kid, he didn't have any issues and stuff, so I had to do creative things. So sometimes I come home, look like I'm 6 months pregnant because I got a gift for him that I take to his room where nobody can see it. Because he was just hit upside the head the other day by somebody that was mad, you know. You do little things, you know. He might find $5 under his pillow, and he did not lose a tooth at all, you know. Just things so he knows that I'm a part of this family, I'm still special, even though them kids got problems. But my mom still loves me, and even though she spent a lot of time with those kids that got problems, I'm still, you know, the object of her focus and her attention and her love at the same time. It's challenging because you're juggling 24/7. But when you're called to do it, you do it. And God gives you the grace to do it. So, yeah.
I'm gonna ask Brittany to also speak into that question, because I think that would be
Miss Rachel handled most of the things that I was gonna say. I would just expand on the pre-teach, right? I mean, that part is so important. Pre-teach your kids ahead of time, so if you tell them that it's probably going to happen, and you help set an expectation of how to help them deal with that, right? Like, when this happens, what do you do? That always helps, because then they're prepared for it. It's not like they're like, oh gosh, what's going on? You help remind them, go back to the word, like this is expectation in our house, like we don't say those words, we don't do those things. And then also Miss Rachel had talked about, you gotta give them something else. So the only way that they're gonna learn a new skill is you have to replace that old behavior with the one that you want. So we call them redos. So it goes back to TBRI language, and you say, hey, do you want to redo? Like, let's try that with respect. If they don't know how to say it with respect, you give them a phrase that they can say that's a respectful phrase. You try to give them words that would be different words that they can fill in there instead. If you do this enough, they'll start to get the picture, because one time I had a 3-year-old in my car, and we're going by a police officer who has pulled over somebody for speeding, and he screams, give him a redo! Give him a redo! Right? So if you do it enough, they start to see that, like, and they don't feel shame in the fact that they messed up, right? Because it's not like they're kids, this is what they've learned. It's not like they're trying to do something that is not expected in your household, right? So how do we help teach them new ways to do it, but in a loving, not shameful way?
So, sorry, one more question with that. Setting those expectations up front. So like if we've come from a background that was not that situation, so not necessarily knowing what to expect from them, is that something that like you all could help with? Like, these are things, behaviors that you will quite likely see in need to set expectations from the beginning. Language, obviously, like nice touches or maybe no touches, like we don't touch other people. Like, are there more things that you feel like would be good things to say, like on day one? Like, we have 4 things and we need to make sure are set out for you.
That's a really good question. I'll grab that one, because I'm usually one that takes the intake, and I get to know the mom. I usually am the one that fills out the child information form. And in the child information form, we ask a lot of questions. We ask, we had one mom say, okay, here's the thing you have to know. If my daughter's upset, you'll know it, because she will give you this look. She might not say anything. And if she gives you that look and you try to address it, this is the behavior you're gonna get. And she took us through the whole thing. So I'm gonna interview the parents. We've got one little boy, that's in a home right now. The mom said, I don't know what's going on, but at daycare, if there's a little boy in the room, he's gonna hit him. Little girl can do the same thing that the little boy did, and he'll pat her on the back. This little boy, he's gonna hit her, or hit him. And so the host mom is addressing behaviors. And I sat down with the little boy and done some boundary work with him and some reteaching and just redos, and all those things. So I can't guarantee that I will always know everything, but I will have a pretty good feel on the mom and what she has experienced, what's going on in her life, and I will have talked to her in depth about each one of the children that we're going to consider. Does that help?
Could I add something to Erin's question? If you're integrating or bringing these kids into your home and you've got existing children, our kids were 6, 9, and 10, and I would say trust the rest of your village. All of you in here already have that community, and that's part of what's going to equip us to serve in this way. And we got advice, the gal we carpooled with said, I think you better talk to Kate about what's going on, kind of thing. So trust those people that are already in your kids' lives and ask them, you had a play date with my daughter over. Did you see any changes in her behavior? Did you notice anything that concerns you? Let those people continue to be involved and to give you input for things that you may not see because you're in the throes of the squeaky wheel, as you said.
I like that, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go to our next one. Can you